If I told you that your favorite cartoon probably has a bizarre copy made on the other side of the world, would you believe it?
Oh, no way!
That's exactly the case with Bobby and Bobo. Just from the name, you can already guess who this weird copy is ripping off. It's an Iranian production that's nothing less than a blatant knockoff of SpongeBob, Nickelodeon's biggest phenomenon in history, and one you've surely watched at least once in your life. The animation first came out in movie format, but the level of similarity to the original cartoon is insane. SpongeBob and Patrick only got slightly rounder features, but they kept the exact same colors, nearly identical settings, and even copied personalities. What's even crazier is that the animation quality only improves when they literally trace official SpongeBob scenes. It really looks like the animators just drew on top of the original footage and called it a day. And there's more. In the first movies from this franchise, they didn't even bother hiding it. The characters had the same names and the exact same appearance as the official version. Basically, they were pirate SpongeBob movies, being shown as if they were legit. Only later did they make small changes, but the copy was still obvious. But what if I told you that one of Disney's biggest box office hits in history is actually nothing more than a blatant copy? Would you believe it? That's right. Not many people know this, but Frozen has a high chance of being inspired by a low-budget Russian production called The Snow Kingdom, also known as The Snow Queen. And just from the name, you can already start spotting the similarities, right? Just like Elsa is a queen with freezing powers, the Russian franchise, which already has 4 films, the last released in 2018, also features a villain, the Snow Queen, who is confronted by a brave girl named Gerda. She's on a mission to rescue her brother Kai, with whom she has a close and caring relationship, another big similarity between the movies. On top of that, just like Olaf, there's a funny character named Orma, a snow troll who helps the heroine throughout the movies. And why would Frozen be a copy of this animation? You might be asking yourself. Simple. The Snow Kingdom was released on December 27, 2012 in Russia, almost a full year before Frozen hit theaters on November 27, 2013. Both films are clearly inspired by the fairy tale The Snow Queen from Danish writer Hans Christian Andersen, the same author of The Little Mermaid, which just goes to show there's way more between heaven and earth than our shallow philosophy can explain, as Shakespeare would say. And today, get ready to have your mind blown with several other copies of famous cartoons you had no idea even existed. Now let's talk about Bluey, who unfortunately also learned firsthand what it's like to be the target of knockoffs. The little blue dog was already compared to Peppa Pig from the start, but she managed to stand out and build her own identity. The same can't be said about Chip Chilla, an American cartoon that looks like a straight-up clone of the Australian series. Chip is a chinchilla who lives with his family, and the plot revolves around his playtime with his siblings and the lessons they learn, exactly like Bluey. That might sound like coincidence, but here's the issue. The whole visual identity looks almost identical. Blue characters, copied backgrounds, and even the family's house, which looks way too similar, if not straight-up identical, to the healer's home. It's no wonder that when you search for Chip Chilla online, all you find are negative comments and comparisons to Bluey. The main criticism is the blatant lack of originality. Instead of taking inspiration and creating something fresh, it ended up being branded as shameless plagiarism, which is a shame because it actually could have been something pretty cool. And it's not just cartoons that get ripped off. Sometimes even video games fall into the copycat trap. A crystal clear example is Hippo, a mobile game where you have to take care of baby animals. The main character is a hippo, but instead of going with the usual gray like most, the creators decided to make him pink. And guess what? He ended up looking almost exactly like Peppa Pig. That choice wasn't random. The idea was clearly to trick kids into thinking it was an official product connected to the famous Piggy. Other characters also strongly resemble the British cartoons gang, like one that looks practically identical to Candy Cat. And it doesn't stop there. The houses and settings follow the same style as Peppa Pig. And even the animation style blatantly imitates the original. With so many copied elements, it's impossible not to see Hippo as a direct ripoff. Just another weird copy for our list. Now let's talk about Lucky Pie, which is yet another example of China loving to copy famous productions from the West. This time, the target was Adventure Time, one of Cartoon Network's most beloved shows. Both cartoons take place in crazy worlds full of strange creatures, many of them made of food, and the similarities don't stop there. Just like Finn and Jake, the main characters of Lucky Pie are also an unlikely duo. Popeye, the human boy, and Lucky, a talking horse that strongly reminds us of the boy and magic dog partnership. The animation style also gives it away, since it looks pretty much like an alternate version of Adventure Time's visuals. No more, no less. But, unlike other shameless knockoffs, here the situation changes a bit. Lucky Pie wasn't made by a big company, but rather by independent artists who used crowdfunding to bring the project to life. That makes it pretty clear that they were huge fans of Adventure Time and just wanted to pay tribute to the show. The problem is, the tribute ended up being so similar that it turned into an almost perfect clone. Before we keep going with our list of the most blatant copies in the world of animation, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Now here's a case that actually became famous even among the creators of the original show, Miracle Star, the Chinese version of The Amazing World of Gumball. This cartoon was born with a pretty unusual purpose. to serve as an ad for a goat milk brand with the same name. The protagonist is Kiki, a goat boy who goes on adventures with his pet frog, Quack. So far that could sound harmless, but the moment you look at it, you can tell everything is practically identical to Gumball. The most obvious detail is Kiki's dad, who's a shameless copy of Richard, Gumball's dad. The ripoff was so blatant that it eventually caught the attention of Cartoon Network, and their response was brilliant. They made an episode where the Wattersons run into parodies of the Miracle Star characters, who copy everything they do. It was a clever move, a sharp roast that showed how the original team knew how to laugh and criticize at the same time. We also have The Samsonadzis, George's version of The Simpsons, and honestly, it's kind of ironic since the American series itself loves to satirize just about everyone. But in this case, it's not satire. It's a straight-up copy. Just like The Simpsons, the Samsonadzi family is yellow and goes through everyday situations, but with a focus on Georgian culture. The dad is basically Homer with hair. The son looks a lot like Bart, but bald. The daughter is kind of a flirty version of Lisa. And the mom looks like Marge, but without the trademark blue hair and with some extra makeup. On top of the visual similarities, the series also tries to deliver social criticism, sometimes even heavier than what we see in The Simpsons. But the funniest detail is that instead of having a cat or a dog, the family has a parrot as their pet. It's an unusual twist, but even that doesn't hide the fact that The Samsonadzis was clearly made to be an alternate version of The Simpsons, yet another copy made with zero shame. To kick off this final stretch in style, let's head straight to South Korea. Back in 1979, they released an animated movie called Golden Batman, which, as the name already suggests, is basically a version of Batman, except he's gold and has some over-the-top superpowers, like flying and shooting lasers from his eyes. Picture Bruce Wayne with Superman's abilities. That's exactly what it looks like. But the craziest part is the plot twist behind this whole story. Golden Batman was actually inspired by a Japanese character named Golden Bat, created way back in 1931, which means before Superman or Batman even existed. Many researchers consider him the very first superhero of all time, or at least one of the pioneers. So here's the big question. Did DC's Batman take inspiration from him? The answer is no. Golden Bat wore a skull mask and had supernatural abilities which had nothing in common with the dark and very human style of The Dark Knight. The confusion only started with the Korean film, when Golden Bat was turned into Golden Batman. That's when it became an outright knockoff, riding on the popularity of Gotham's hero. In other words, they had the chance to honor one of the first superheroes in history, but instead it turned it into a cheap ripoff, tricking fans who probably bought tickets thinking they'd be watching DC's Batman. What a major fail. Now let's move on to the 90s, when the massive success of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was still echoing everywhere. Enter Street Sharks. The formula was almost identical, a team of anthropomorphic animals fighting crime with loads of charisma and non-stop action. Only this time, instead of mutant ninja turtles, we got 4 teenage mutant sharks. The differences were more in the details. While the turtles were regular reptiles who gained human-like abilities, the sharks started out as regular guys who were transformed into ocean predators. And just like the turtles, they had some fun hobbies in common. The ninjas were amazing on skateboards, while the sharks were all about extreme sports like motorbiking. It's safe to say that Street Sharks rode the wave created by the Ninja Turtles and ended up building its own fanbase, but no one can deny that the whole concept was clearly born out of some heavy-handed inspiration from the original franchise. To wrap up our list with a golden touch, here's a curious case: Goober and the Ghost Chasers. The premise is practically the same as Scooby-Doo, a group of teens solving mysteries with the help of a super scared talking dog. And if you thought that was just coincidence, it definitely wasn't. The series premiered in 1973, just 4 years after Scooby-Doo debuted in 1969, so there's no doubt about who copied who. The main difference is that in Goober, the ghosts were often real, whereas in Scooby-Doo, they usually turned out to be crooks in masks.
Now let's see who's really behind these bandages. Dr. Najee!
And on top of that, Goober had the ability to turn invisible whenever he got scared, which led to some pretty funny moments. But here's the funniest part. This so-called knockoff was actually made by Hanna-Barbera itself, the very same studio that created Scooby-Doo. The show's success was so massive that the studio kept trying to replicate the formula in different ways, putting out similar productions to see if they would catch on. But in the end, none of them came close to reaching the everlasting success of Scooby and his gang. So did you enjoy uncovering these bizarre rip-offs scattered across the world of animation? Then don't stop here. Check out the 2 videos popping up on your screen right now, because I'm sure you'll laugh a lot and be even more surprised.